Hey everybody, John here, and today I wanted to break down my Wwise session for you. This is an interactive audio system that I designed for a top-down survival shooter game in Unity called Nightmares. Now if you haven't already, be sure to check out my other video on this game because it contains actual gameplay footage along with how the music and sound effects work within the actual game. That'll give this video a little bit more context because, as I said, this video is just about the Wwise session itself. And even though we might not cover everything, because that would make for a very long video, we will try to cover most of it. So let's get started. The first thing I want to look at is the game music. So under our game music switch container, you can see that we have several different music segments and other containers as well. And these are going to be controlled by a variety of different game states that are coming from Unity, such as gameplay, win, lose, and menu. So our win and lose stingers are just set up as one-shot segments, and our playlist, our menu music playlist, is set up as a loop. And under our game music switch container, we can see that all these transitions are set up so that as we go through different parts of the game, our transitions between one piece of music and the other go nice and smoothly. Now, our gameplay music, on the other hand, is a little bit different. We have a variety of different playlists going on in here that change throughout the game. And this is based on a game sync called gameplay time. So as our gameplay time runs down and the percentage of time gets lower, it's going to transition us from the beginning music playlist to the middle music playlist, eventually to the end music playlist. So if we go ahead and we look at our beginning music playlist, we'll notice that we have several different loops set up in here. And that is going to allow us to have a variety of different arrangements. So as the game gets repeated and the levels get repeated, the music is different every time. So this is set up within the gameplay middle music and the gameplay end music as well. But let's just start with one for now. So if I hit play here, we're going to see our first 8-bar loop start. And then it's going to pick another 8-bar loop at random and then another 8-bar loop at random. And this will create for a 24-bar arrangement that is going to change each time. Now in the beginning music, this really helps control a variety of different vocal arrangements, as we can hear. But picks the middle one at random, and now it'll pick one of these at random. Now if our gameplay time starts running down, as I had talked about, it'll transition us to the next playlist. So let's see what that sounds like. Cool, now we're in the next section. And underneath all of these loops, we have two other loops that can occur, and that is an enemies within range loop here, which is some hand percussion, and some low health. So with the enemies within range, it's some hand percussion, so we'll check that out. As, let's say there's a bunch of enemies around us. That's controlled, like most of these parameters, with a slew rate. So now if we go even lower, now we're in our end music section. So let's talk about the next thing, which is our low health strings. So as this drops, as our player health drops, let's just whip it way down here. You can hear that there's some high strings coming in to create a little bit of urgency. Now if we go even lower than that, we can hear that in the bass layer, because the bass layer is a separate layer, we have a tremolo coming on in the bass, creating kind of a quarter note pulse. Now if we go even lower than that, in the lowest of lows, we have a delay effect on our sound effects bus. The wet signal will increase to sort of create some disorientation within the player. So if I open up Soundcaster here, and let's just say I play one of the bears getting hurt sounds, you can hear that there's a little bit of delay on that. And again, that's sort of just to represent, I don't know, maybe that the player is getting disoriented and so on and so forth. Now, let's say we were to win the game, we can switch to our win segment, which is going to have a transition. Success. And that would eventually transition back into the menu music, which happens here. Now, if we go back to our gameplay, which is that's not normally how it would happen, but we're just going to jump ahead, and then we go to our lose segment. We have a transition there as well. You lost. Terrible. And of course, that would transition back to our menu music. All right, so that takes care of most of the music stuff and those parameters there. So next, let's look at our sound effects, dialogue, and UI sounds. So our UI is pretty straightforward. We have, let's go to our designer layout. How about that? Oops. I gotta unpin this here. I think that's what I gotta do. So in our UI section, we've got just an enter sound, select, button exit sound, and our start sound. And all of these are just different sounds that I recorded from a door and threw some reverb on there that kind of reflect the spookiness of the room where the game takes place. Next, let's check out some of our dialogue. So let's check out the bear damage sounds. Now, all of our damage sounds from the enemies, being the bear, the Hellefont, and the bunny, are all set up in a very similar fashion. So they are broken down into the hurt dialogue. Oops, I've got to switch that game sync back. Yeah, you can hear that we still have that delay on from that parameter from before. So let's just adjust that quickly. Okay, you know what? Do it like this instead. There we go. Let's bring the player health back up. All right, sorry about that delay. Moving on. So we have our bear hurt sound. And the pitch is affected on this and randomized a little bit to give, again, a little bit more variety. And this is layered with an impact sound, which is just the wand hitting. And in the game, there's a kind of a little poof that happens. And to me, I just tried to record some different pillows getting hit with a variety of different drumsticks and mallets, one different for each enemy, just to kind of reflect kind of that punch on the, like what would be a stuffed animal. Now, if we go over to our event for this, what do we have? Bear, sound effects, bear hurt. Okay, so we have our hurt dialogue and we have our impact dialogue. And we can see that our hurt dialogue has a little bit of a delay on it because we'll have the impact first and then of course the enemy reacting after. Okay, so that's how our enemy dialogue works there. Next, let's check out our enemy death sounds. Those again are set up very similar, except we have different sounds for dying that are a little bit longer and a little bit more dramatic. And again, those are layered with the impacts. While we're on the topic of dialogue, let's check out the player hurt dialogue. We've got a number of different little dialogue segments that the character will say.
Watch it. Oof. Ah.
And again, we've got some pitch and volume randomization on those as well. Let's talk about the player footsteps. Under the footsteps section, we've got a variety of different footsteps to choose from, and I just recorded these with slippers on a piece of wood because the game again takes place in a bedroom, and so I figure if the player was wearing anything, it would probably be slippers. And there's scuffs layered in with this as well. And if we go to events and we look at sound effects, player shoot, player step, we can see that the scuffs have a pretty low probability because as you step along, you won't get as many scuffs as you will footsteps, of course. Cool. So next up, let's talk about some of the ambience. Oh, actually, you know what? I just realized there's one other piece of dialogue we missed. So when the enemies spawn and enter the level, they have a little taunt that they let out. And yeah, this just kind of lets the player know, okay, something's new, something's coming at me. And what I should have mentioned before is, along with all of the enemy dialogue and impact sounds, we have position attenuation as well. So the taunts are set up a little bit differently under an enemy taunt one, and the damage ones are set up under a share set just for enemies. So these work a little bit differently, but they're going to attenuate the sound and low pass filters and so on and so forth. Yeah, so we left off at footsteps. The last thing the player does is has this wand cast, and this is broken down into 2 different sections as well. So we have the wand cast laser, which is a synth recording I did using, as you could imagine, massive, and a bunch of sounds that I recorded with my mouth to give it a little bit more heaviness. And because they have a staff, I wanted to get kind of a staff sound, if that makes any sense. I can't describe it much better than that, but I wanted to just have something a little bit more human and magical in it than just a synth. So I did want to add in some natural mouth sounds as well. So these are layered together, and like everything else, not everything else, but many of the other things, the volume and the pitch and low pass filter are randomized just to, again, give some variety. Finally, let's talk about some of the ambience. So we have an ambience loop set up here. Just a room ambience that I recorded in a bedroom with, I think the furnace was on at the time, and just some natural house sounds as well. Now, if we go over and we look at our ambience loop event, we can see that we have a creak sound and a breath sound as well. So the creak sound is floors, the wooden floors in the game creaking. And the breath sound is to represent that the player is asleep, hypothetically, and that's why they're in a nightmare. And guess what? When you are asleep, you breathe and sometimes kind of snore a little bit. So let's check out some of those sounds. We've got a variety of floor creaks here. Those are probably going to come through very quiet, I realize, on this recording. And these are mixed in with some silence as well, so they're not constantly triggering, and that's also paired with probability, if you saw in the event window as well. A little bit of a lower probability. And then our breath sounds, again, we've got a variety here, and they're mixed with some silence. And again, these are probably gonna be a little bit quiet. These have a nice delay and reverb on them as well, just to kind of give it that, we're in a dream world type effect. Finally, as well as other environment things, along with the ambience, we have some sort of environmental storytelling. So in the game, it takes place in a room, a child's room, so there's toys scattered throughout the floor. I don't know why they didn't clean it up. They couldn't be bothered, I guess. The big game is coming, we're gonna shoot it, and yet they couldn't be bothered to clean up all the toys on the ground. So that leaves us with a variety of things to choose from. And because there's so many different things scattered, I didn't wanna pick too many because then it just becomes this kind of collage of different toy sounds, and that's gonna take away from the music and sound effects. So the 2 things that I picked were a clock loop, and again, this has the positioning attenuation, so as you walk by it kind of moves from ear to ear and gets louder and quieter as you go around. And the other one that I picked is a very half-hearted train whistle being blown, and it's just got a ton of reverb on it, and especially during the beginning music playlist, it really fills the room and just creates this spooky, eerie sort of sound. Yeah. All right, I think that takes care of most of our sound effects and UI. So lastly, let's look how everything is set up under the master audio bus. So I have things broken down into music and sound effects. Under our music, we have our level music, broken into our beginning, middle, and end music, as well as stingers. And under the sound effects tab, I have our ambience, our player being hit, our player dialogue, and our wand cast. So if we look at the wand cast, we're gonna notice that it auto ducks our level music a little bit, and that's just to help it stand out and give it a little bit more intensity and impact. It's very subtle, but it actually does make a difference, and it allows me to keep the wand a little bit quieter, because otherwise I have to turn it up to get it over the music, and I just don't want to do it like that. The player hit does the same. It's the same idea. We want to make sure that we can hear the player being hit, so even if we have the low health strings going and the enemies within range happening, and that intense end music playlist, this is still going to cut through the mix. Our ambience, on the other hand, is auto-ducked by not the beginning music, but the middle and end music ducks it more and more each time. So during the beginning music, it's quite sparse, as you heard, with kind of the vocals. We don't have drums yet, and it's a little bit spooky. So the ambience actually helps paint the picture of the scene quite well. But as the game progresses and the music gets more intense, the ambience isn't needed as much. So I duck it out a little bit, and I don't get rid of it completely because it still helps create a full sound. But I do start bringing it down a little bit. Now, as I had said before, on our sound effects bus, we do have the effect, this delay. Our wet signal increases as the player health drops below 10%, and that, again, is just to help give the player that kind of disoriented feel, like, oh, I'm injured, I don't feel so good, I'm getting delusional, I can't see straight, I've been hit one too many times over the head. And then, yeah, that's it for that chain. And then on our, we have some EQ on the level music, it looks like, and some EQ on the music itself. And then on the master bus, we have some compressors and EQs as well. And yeah, that takes care of the music and master audio bus. So thank you for joining me and watching this video. I appreciate your time. Hopefully you liked watching it, and we'll see you all next time. Take care.